You probably already assume that Hot Pockets aren't the healthiest food option around. At least a few unpronounceable ingredients are to be expected, but what's actually in them may still surprise you. Here's what you're really consuming when you bite into a Hot Pocket. Hot Pockets and Lean Pockets are basically bread stuffed with meats, cheeses, and sometimes vegetables. That's probably not the type of meal you expect to taste sweet or to feature sugar as a primary ingredient. But pretty much every Hot Pocket contains between 2 and 8 grams of sugar. Of course, sugars occur naturally in vegetables and milk products, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that a product with cheese would include some sugar. But if you're trying to stay away from added sugars in your diet, it's important to pay attention. According to the Mayo Clinic, people sticking to a 2,000 calorie per day diet should try to consume no more than 48 grams of sugar per day. If, for example, you have a barbecue recipe white meat chicken lean pocket containing 8 grams of added sugars, you'll need to be careful about how much additional sugar you consume in your other meals and snacks throughout the day. The reality is that sugars are often included in processed foods like Hot Pockets because they add texture and flavor, and they help bread to rise. Considering that the Hot Pocket brand prides itself on crispy crusts and breads, it makes sense then that there's a little sugar in each one.
Give me some sugar, baby.
Considering that the bulk of a Hot Pocket is wrapped in a casing of crust or bread, you might think that food coloring would be unnecessary, but you would be wrong about that. Pretty much every Hot Pocket product does in fact use some type of food coloring, especially caramel coloring for beef or meatball products. And there's also annatto or turmeric to enhance the yellows of cheese and eggs. According to the American Chemical Society, processed foods like Hot Pockets need food coloring to make them more appealing to the eye. Without food coloring, hot dogs would be gray, which certainly sounds a lot less appealing than the brown that we've come to expect. And while you're probably not spending a ton of time dissecting what your Hot Pocket looks like after that first bite, you would probably notice if it looked gray, and then you would probably stop eating, hence the food coloring. Textured vegetable protein sure doesn't sound very appealing, but if you've enjoyed a Hot Pocket recently, you probably didn't even notice it was there. Textured vegetable protein is often used as a meat replacement or meat extender. In essence, it's a soy-based protein that looks and tastes similar to ground beef. Also, it's less expensive than beef, so when companies like Nestle, which is Hot Pocket's parent company, add textured vegetable protein to their products, it's almost certainly to make it appear that there's more beef in the product than there actually is. This addition allows food manufacturers to use less ground beef while maintaining the flavor and texture of meat and reducing the overall cost to make each product. And if customers can't taste the difference, it's actually a smart business ploy. If you prefer to stay away from imitation cheeses, pay close attention to which Hot Pockets you purchase. The ever-popular pepperoni pizza may tout that it's made with real cheese, but chicken broccoli and cheddar, for example, features imitation cheddar cheese right alongside real cheddar cheese on its ingredient list. Imitation cheeses function similarly to textured vegetable proteins, as they offer companies a way to extend a natural product with an imitation that looks and tastes a lot like the real thing. The milk fat in imitation cheeses is partially or entirely removed from the cheese and replaced with non-milk-based alternatives, often vegetable fats. The result is almost identical to regular cheese, and the flavor is often very similar. This allows companies to provide more cheese flavoring and texture without the expense of actually adding more real cheese. The catch is that it's unclear why some Hot Pockets products use imitation cheese while others don't. So if you like your cheese real, pay attention and read the ingredient list carefully when you're making your next Hot Pocket purchase. If you've ever melted cheddar cheese in a dish, you've probably witnessed what happens when the cheese cools down. The fat separates from the solids, and you get a weird, congealed mess of what remains of the hard parts of the cheese in a gross puddle of grease. It's not exactly the creamy, melty goodness that makes food look appealing. The experience is different with American cheese or with products like Velveeta or canned nacho cheese. When these cheeses are heated, they have a smooth consistency that's perfect for cheese dips or grilled cheese sandwiches. The secret to these products is sodium citrate, which is a salt solution with a sour, salty taste. Older or harder cheeses that have less liquid content are harder to melt with a smooth consistency because when heated, the fat breaks away from the solids and separates. When sodium citrate is added, it substitutes itself for some of the calcium that makes these cheeses stick together, preventing the fats from completely separating and providing for a smoother, easier melt. Not all Hot Pockets contain sodium citrate, but with the ones that do, you can expect a creamy and smooth consistency with the cheese. If you've ever eaten a Hot Pocket, you've eaten a dough conditioner, which is an ingredient that's included in every single Hot Pockets product. But what in the world are dough conditioners? They're ingredients or chemicals that improve dough processing and the quality of baked goods in high production environments. In other words, when companies need to make a lot of identical products all at once and they need to turn them over fast, dough conditioners help ensure and improve the quality of bread and baked goods. Simply put, it helps to guarantee the consistency of the product time and time again. Dough conditioners can be credited for improving crust development and color, general appearance and symmetry, shelf life, and crumb structure. Considering that the Hot Pocket brand places a very high value on the crispy, flaky texture of its bread, it makes sense that the company would use a dough conditioner during the production process. Lactic acid isn't a term that people usually throw around when talking about cooking. It comes up more often when discussing a tough workout, as it's what causes the burning sensation that you feel in your muscles as you push yourself to exhaustion. But lactic acid bacteria is also included in the ingredient list of most Hot Pockets products. So why exactly is this the case? Lactic acid bacteria are often used in food fermentation, as with cheese, yogurt, and kimchi. These are good bacteria that help kill bad bacteria and keep food safer. The lactic acid in Hot Pockets is most often listed as a part of the seasoning, along with ingredients like salt, onion powder, garlic powder, and cheddar cheese powder. It's also included as a component of pepperoni. It isn't entirely clear why lactic acid plays an important role in the production of Hot Pockets, but it's most likely used as a preservative to extend their shelf life and safety. Buttermilk powder probably isn't an ingredient you'd automatically assume is included in most Hot Pockets varieties, but all of the breakfast versions in fact include buttermilk. When you think about it, it makes sense. Nothing says breakfast more than a hot buttermilk biscuit after all. So when you think about it that way, why wouldn't Hot Pockets amp up their breakfast crust with the sharp and sour addition of buttermilk powder?
Recently they introduced the breakfast Hot Pocket, finally. I can't think of a better way to start the day.
If you've never heard of buttermilk powder, it's a secret baking ingredient for many chefs. Alice Osborne, a writer for the Cookin' blog, is a big advocate for adding it to biscuits, cakes, fried chicken, and even soups. According to her, it's a much better option for long-term shelf life than buying and using liquid buttermilk from the dairy aisle. That's just more proof positive that there's an art to making irresistible processed foods like Hot Pockets. You might be familiar with Whey from the Little Miss Muffet nursery rhyme.
Little Ms. Muffet sat on her tuffet eating her curds and whey.
Or you might know it in the context of cheese making, as it's considered a waste byproduct of cheese production. Or perhaps you know about whey protein powder, which is used as a nutritional supplement. But what you might not be aware of is that according to 2018 research published in the Journal of Dairy and Veterinary Sciences, whey is frequently recycled in the food industry as a part of making secondary dairy products. The reasons for this are twofold. First, the whey produced during cheese making is actually the bulk of the milk needed to make cheese, as about 80% of the volume of milk used during cheese making remains as whey. Cheesemakers have to figure out an environmentally safe way to dispose of this waste. Second, whey is highly nutritionally dense. While it may be considered waste to cheesemakers, it contains roughly 20% of the protein found in milk, hence its common use as a protein powder for nutritional reasons. When whey is added to foods, as with many Hot Pockets, it usually functions to increase cheese yield and protein content without affecting the flavor or consistency of the cheese. For companies like Nestle, this is an efficient way to keep the flavor high and the costs low. If you check the ingredient list on almost any Hot Pockets product, you'll see palm oil listed at least once, if not multiple times. For many people, the inclusion of palm oil in processed foods is a bit of a red flag. It's gotten a bad rap for many years due to its high saturated fat content. Because palm oil is semi-solid and stable at room temperature, companies that produce processed foods started using it as an affordable alternative to trans fats after the United States banned the addition of trans fats to foods sold in grocery stores. The good news is that the high saturated fat content found in palm oil doesn't need to scare you. While too much fat in your diet, particularly saturated fat, should be avoided, palm oil contains vitamin E and tocotrienols, which function as antioxidants that may help protect brain and heart health. As long as you're not eating Hot Pockets or other processed foods too excessively, and you have an overall balanced and healthy diet heavy on fruits and vegetables, then a little palm oil here and there is unlikely to be harmful. High fructose corn syrup has gotten a pretty bad rap. There's certainly some merit to the concerns about the addition of this sweetener to many processed foods, but just because a product like Cheddar Cheeseburger Hot Pockets contains high fructose corn syrup, that doesn't mean you should immediately nix it from your grocery list.
That has high fructose corn syrup in it.
And?
You know what they say about it?
Like what?
The reality is that many food companies started adding high fructose corn syrup to processed foods as a slightly less expensive ingredient than regular table sugar. And as sugar intake as a whole increased in the United States, so did health concerns like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. But the real concern here shouldn't be with high fructose corn syrup itself, but rather the total increase in sugar intake in the American diet. While some people have voiced concerns that the body processes high fructose corn syrup differently than it processes regular sugar, research studies have failed to support this assertion. It's generally more important then to keep track of your overall sugar consumption. According to the Mayo Clinic, people consuming a 2,000 calorie per day diet should consume no more than 48 grams per day. So if your sugar intake as a whole remains reasonably low, having a little high fructose corn syrup in your diet is unlikely to be the downfall of your overall health.
And that comes with a side of Pepto.
Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more mashed videos about your favorite food products are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.